ReLIFE is a brand new, at the time of making this video, anime that received a ton of attention at the beginning of the summer 2016 season due to its abnormal release schedule, dropping all 13 episodes simultaneously Netflix style. Shortly after that initial first week or so of buzz, talk of this show quickly declined, and that's a shame because ReLIFE is one of the best shows in its genre that I've seen in a long time. That genre being high school rom-com, a genre that often suffers from a lot of cliches and bad execution. ReLIFE is about 27-year-old Kaizaki Arata, whose career is at a standstill after failing at every job interview he's done for months. He's then given the opportunity to become a test subject at the ReLIFE Research Institute, where he will take a pill that makes him appear 10 years younger, and then attend high school for a year as a normal student with the promise of a job afterwards if everything goes well. Up until this point, I'd forgive you for thinking that ReLIFE is just some generic, uninspired bullshit, another cliched high school rom-com. This synopsis, the cover art, and even the name all give off the aura that this show is something that's probably not worth your time. Even I had that impression of this show going into it, but that quickly changed once I started watching it. There's a ton of subtle choices that add up to make this show stand out. For starters, Kaizaki isn't some deadbeat otaku that plays Monster Hunter all day. Instead, he's a completely normal person that just happened to end up in an unfortunate position, which already makes ReLIFE a far more grounded and relatable show than most stuff in this genre. Rather than presenting us with a character that has a bucket list of unfulfilled high school fantasies, we get someone who's already been there and done that. Kaizaki is supposed to have graduated from high school a decade ago, and the show does a fantastic job of portraying that. At the start, he doesn't even want to go back into high school, he's just doing it for the money. As the show progresses, we learn more about Kaizaki and he becomes even more relatable as the show goes on. Having a cast of likable characters is integral to crafting a successful work in this genre, and ReLIFE succeeds at this greatly. Besides Kaizaki, the rest of the main cast is entertaining, and the show managed to make me like almost all of its characters by the end. The second most important character in this show is Hishiro, who serves as the contrast to Kaizaki. She's an intelligent tryhard at school, but fails miserably at social interaction. Her personality isn't anything that I haven't seen before in anime. In fact, it's almost identical to a certain someone. That character is about as self-aware as a fucking rock. She might as well be a pet cat for the purposes of the show. Unlike that character, Hishiro is at least partially self-aware that she has issues, enough to make her ask Kaizaki for advice about it. After that exchange, Hishiro and Kaizaki always find themselves together throughout the show, whether intentionally or inadvertently. I appreciated that the show managed to never forget about her, even when the focus of conflict was on different characters. She's always there and is growing as a character, and by the end of the show she's ended up making a lot of friends and learning how to better deal with people without the show constantly having to force it to happen. Then there's Yoake, who is probably the funniest character in the show. He works at the ReLIFE Research Institute and is assigned to Kaizaki. His job not only entails approaching Kaizaki in the first place, but also observing him while he's in class and just living his life. He comes off as being a passive-aggressive dick to me personally, but in a very comedic way if that makes any sense. He's constantly withholding information from Kaizaki, which leads to a lot of hilarious scenes, like when Kaizaki finds out that he's going to be in the same class as him. Due to the policy of the ReLIFE Institute, Yoake is supposed to keep his distance from Kaizaki while in the classroom, so most of their interactions take place after school. Then there's my favorite character, Anne, who starts off as this innocuous transfer student that, like Kaizaki, fails all of her tests, and seems somewhat out of place in this high school. It doesn't take long for her to get more comfortable in this environment, and once she does, her true personality begins to show. I don't want to say too much more about her for fear of ruining the show, but had to mention her as she is my favorite character. Finally, there's the duo of Reina and Kazumi, who also complement each other in the same kind of way that Kaizaki and Hishiro do. Reina herself is in the spotlight quite a bit, and two of the main conflicts end up centering around her. She's probably the most whiny or typical character in this show because a lot of the issues that she creates or perceives end up being misunderstandings or just non-issues entirely. Kazumi, who is her best friend, helps to relieve that a little bit, and the two of them get a really nice arc that spans most of the show and becomes very prominent towards the end. ReLIFE's plot is tightly woven for the most part, having a few different threads running simultaneously that ensure it doesn't linger on one thing for too long, while still remaining coherent and not being jarring. The show is mainly structured around these 2 to 3 episode long arcs about a conflict between the characters and the conflict's subsequent resolution. These conflicts can be as silly as you would expect from high school anime characters, but they're presented from a different perspective, Kaizaki's perspective, someone who knows how to deal with these situations. It's immensely satisfying to see, especially as someone who has watched a ton of shows in this genre, some of which were pretty fucking bad. Interspersed between the conflicts going on at school are these scenes, some of which take place before the show and some during, that help to flesh out certain details of Kaizaki's life and how he ended up where he was at the beginning of the show. It is primarily in these simultaneous plot lines that ReLIFE manages to work in its themes of depression, post-traumatic stress, and workplace toxicity without being heavy-handed or ruining the comfy and lighthearted atmosphere that it does such a good job of fostering. It's what makes this show noteworthy, and what will make a lot of people find this show to be more relatable and realistic, even though it's still technically a high school rom-com about someone taking preposterous magical pills. The biggest issue this show has is its visuals, and besides Anne, who has a genuinely great character design, the rest of the show isn't very noteworthy from a visual standpoint. That's not to say that anything stands out as being particularly bad. The animation and art serve their purpose of presenting the story, but they just don't do much beyond that. Is ReLIFE worth watching? Yes. I'm always looking for that anime that seems standard on the surface but actually has a lot to say on the inside, and ReLIFE is that show this season. It's an enjoyable watch that has a great balance of comedy and drama and even manages to bring a fresh, satisfying perspective to the genre.